It is Texas A&M week for the Miami Hurricanes. What's it going to take to win the game, and what impact would that have on recruiting?
You are Locked On Canes, your daily podcast on the Miami Hurricanes, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Happy Monday, if there is such a thing. I'm Alex Donno, your host, University of Miami alumnus, longtime South Florida sports radio vet, and contributor to allhurricanes.com. And thank you to the everydayers for making Locked On Canes your first listen. We are available free wherever you get your podcasts and free on YouTube. Let's bring in a colleague of mine at allhurricanes.com. He's also the recruiting expert here in these parts, the Locked On Network, and recruiting overlord, I like to call him. Brian Smith is with us. Brian, how are you?
Doing very well, Alex. How about yourself?
I'm doing well. And guys, every time Brian joins us, he is brought to you by LinkedIn. These days, every new potential hire can feel like a high-stakes wager for your small business. That's why LinkedIn Jobs helps find the right people for your team faster and for free. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. Terms and conditions apply. We got a lot of questions from you guys for me and Brian to answer on our subtext SMS texting community. Like we get one from Silos who says, hey, if Miami wins their first 5 games, I know he's getting a little ahead of himself here, but if Miami wins their first 5 games, which would include a victory against Texas A&M, what kind of an impact would that have on recruiting, Brian? Let's take it one game at a time. If Miami goes 2-0 and they upset the Aggies this weekend, how much of a needle mover can that be?
I think it would be huge. A lot of the kids that they're still trying to recruit, whether they're committed elsewhere, trying to finalize, whatever, are South Florida players that more than likely are going to be at the game this next weekend. I don't even care what the list is right now, because South Florida kids will make up their minds last minute. We both know
right.
how that
Like we think Jeremiah Smith is probably going to be at the game. We think.
I wouldn't be surprised if a certain wide receiver that also plays at Palmetto, committed to Nebraska, is that's they're going to do their best effort to get guys like that on campus, all the time. And in this case, in Miami Gardens at the game. So if you see it live, it's different. I was down on the field for the game against, Miami of Ohio, the other Miami, because they are not the real Miami. Let me just throw that out there again. They got bludgeoned. It's different when you see a team. I'm sorry. They didn't even come close. They played well on both sides of the ball. It showed how much faster they are, more cohesive. Well, recruits are going to see that too. It matters. And then it's going to be nationally televised. There's going to be all kinds of different people there. There'll be more people in the stands. All of that is good. If you win that game, it doesn't say you're automatically a national title contender necessarily, but it also says, hey, Miami's on the right track. And Cristobal and his staff are going to say the following. You guys, whatever recruits are still left, are a part of why we get over the hump. And it's true. This is important. You're not going to get the Jeremiah Smiths of the world by getting beat in games like this. You need to win these kinds of games. It's justifiable, though. If they do beat them, hey, you caught their attention. This matters.
So in game 1, the Hurricanes offense was efficient and it was effective. And I thought Tyler Van Dyke ran the offense well, but Miami didn't take a lot of vertical shots, Brian. They only went down the field twice. One of those was an interception. The other did create a pass interference penalty, which is obviously a positive play on a pass that went incomplete to Jacoby George, but Miami moved down the field for the penalty. But another team that didn't go vertical in their first game were the Ohio State Buckeyes. Now, for the last 15 years, it's always been a plug-and-play quarterback situation there. Whoever they plug in at quarterback is a Heisman contender. It's not necessarily looking that way so far, Brian. And so we get a question from our guy Leeds, who says, how much of a factor is it that the Buckeyes quarterbacks didn't look good when it comes to Jeremiah Smith, whether they can keep him in their class or, whether Miami or someone else can flip him?
I'm going to say it at least starts the thinking process. Now, this was the first time that young man started.
Yeah.
Having stated that, it's Indiana. As a guy that attended Indiana University, grew up in Indiana, that is not a feared defense ever. So I'm concerned that there's something a little off there, and it may just be reps, but both quarterbacks played and neither one was dominant. They don't have a starting quarterback right now.
Right.
Jeremiah told me a long time ago he picked Ohio State based on their pedigree and how they develop guys, quarterbacks, etc. But if they just fall off the wagon through, say, game 3, 4, then they go to Notre Dame and get smoked or something, then we can talk. But this is just the start. It certainly didn't hurt Miami's chances. If he would have went out and thrown for 380 and 5 scores, that'd have been real bad for Miami. So this is the beginning step. They need to play under what expectations are for Miami to get it. That's just flat out part of it. But they were pedestrian. I mean, maybe it's just because I watched the game, quite a bit of it, and I'm like, he doesn't look comfortable. The backup didn't look comfortable. They weren't throwing on time. I don't know. Like, you can't ask for a better wide receiver corps. I mean, for the love of mankind. I mean, it's ridiculous what they have. So that's on QB play. It wasn't like Indiana was up in his face either. No. I think that Miami has a little better shot now before I saw the game compared to before I saw the game, because Ohio State, this is not a dominant team. I don't think they're going to end up in the national title race.
So another question about what we saw from the Hurricanes week 1, and then we're going to dive headfirst into the matchup against Texas A&M. But, this kind of ties into what we were just talking about, Brian, because obviously wide receiver recruits are going to be looking at the future of the quarterback position at Miami, because, it's probably Tyler Van Dyke's last year. And we get this question from I'm trying to find. We got a question about Emory Williams. I'm trying to find who asked the question, but here it is from Colby. Colby says, "Hey, what do you think about Emory's debut against Miami, Ohio? He got in, Brian, 9 minutes left in the fourth quarter, threw 3 passes. He says, I'd love to hear his scouting report, Brian's scouting report on how Emory looked. What did you think about Emory Williams?"
He did what I expected him to. And just because I know the kid and I'd scout him at Elite 11, been to a practice, everything when he was in high school, I was watching him from pregame to the sidelines, every little thing. Emory carries himself a little bit differently than most young men, even an early 20s kid. He's very mature.
Yeah.
Every throw and warm-ups, everything else, he makes it look like, okay, I know I'm the starter today. And he's standing right next to Tyler when he's doing this. I'm like, this guy just understands how to work his craft. So he went out there and didn't look like a lost sheep. A lot of freshman quarterbacks look terrible in their first games. Let's be honest. Yeah. He didn't. It didn't surprise me. He is not ready to be the starter, but he's way ahead of the majority of quarterbacks in college football as a freshman. I think there's going to be a little bit less, quote unquote, of a transfer of the quarterback reins next year than what most teams will go through. Now, do I think he's going to be in the Heisman race next year? Probably not. There's kind of a golden rule. You got to be third year removed from high school usually before guys take off. But I bet you by the end of next year, he's really good. I'm not worried about it. I think that it's pretty much what you should expect. If you'd seen as much as I had, I know I've seen him live a little bit more than other people. It didn't surprise me at all.
Well, if the Miami Hurricanes have a shot to upset the Aggies at home this Saturday, what are the burning questions the Hurricanes need to answer? We're going to answer those when we come back. We're only getting started. Our recruiting expert, Brian Smith, joins us. Keep it locked right here to Locked On Canes. Folks, I know you're keeping it locked to Athletic Brewing. My friends, it is time for your Game Changer of the Week, brought to you by Athletic Brewing Company. Much like Lance Guidry, Athletic Brewing has completely changed the non-alcoholic beer game. They make non-alcoholic beers that actually taste good. And Lance Guidry, he's our game changer of the week because Miami's defensive coordinator is going to have a great schematic matchup against Bobby Petrino, the OC at Texas A&M. We'll see what Guidry can scheme up to try and limit what looks like a very vertical passing game from the Aggies so far. So all eyes are going to be on Guidry this week. And all eyes are on Athletic Brewing Company. They've completely changed the non-alcoholic beer game. They make non-alcoholic beers that actually taste good, full flavor, and well-crafted, just like a full-strength beer. I love it. They brew over 50 styles of craft non-alcoholic beer, including IPAs, Goldens, Sours, and so much more. First-time customers can use code LOCKEDON to get 15% off your first online order. And you do that by visiting athleticbrewing.com. That's locked on at checkout for 15% off at athleticbrewing.com. Near beer, exclusions and conditions apply. Athletic Brewing Company, fit for all times. Thank you so much for making Locked On Canes your first listen today. We're available free wherever you get your podcasts and available free on YouTube. And for the everydayers, we're not even done today because I'm going to be in Coral Gables in a few hours talking with Mario Cristobal, Lance Guidry, our game changer of the week, and Shannon Dawson. We're going to have all those videos posted on our YouTube channel a little bit later on today. But Brian Smith joins us now. By the way, Brian, we got a question from one of our listeners, Trelvis, who says, does Brian like or dislike being called the recruiting overlord? Do you have an opinion on that?
I think it's pretty unique. I've never heard it before, so I'm special, I guess.
Yeah,
I'm good with it.
Oh man, so okay, heading into this Texas A&M matchup, and we'll talk a little bit more about the FanDuel odds, but it seems like the money is coming in on Miami because it opened over the weekend. Texas A&M were 7.5-point favorites, so that meant Miami plus 7.5 underdogs. I'm now seeing Miami plus 3.5, so money seems to be coming in towards the Hurricanes. They're still dogs, but yeah, Brian, for whatever reason,
swing? That's a big swing, man.
That's a big swing, right? A huge swing. What are the biggest burning questions for you that the Canes have to answer if they're going to get this done?
Well, number one is they got to be consistent like they were in the last game. They didn't let the ball go over their heads. They only gave up 215 yards on defense.
Right.
Weigman, the quarterback for A&M. Hey, man, I know A&M and myself included, they've stunk at quarterback for quite a while, and I had my doubts until I otherwise saw it. He had 5 TDs, was 18 of 23. He can play.
Yeah.
So you got to slow down the running game to at least put him in awkward circumstances. And that's the first thing I talked about. Hey, they got playmakers. They've got him. What can you do against him? It may only be a few plays because it'll probably be a close game. They need to make the play, a strip sack, a deflection near the goal line, whatever it is. Can Miami get over the top on that? That's my biggest one. And then the other one, I know this is boring, turnovers, special teams, field position. You and I talked about this before the episode. You're not going to consistently go 10, 12, 14 plays against A&M anyway. You need some big plays, but they got to win the field position battle. Those are my 2 biggest out of the 7. I was kind of going through them. They're all important, all 7 questions that I asked, but those are the 2 that are most important to me.
Yeah, and then something I think about, because this was an issue where Miami failed against A&M last year, executing in the red zone, like getting into the red zone and scoring touchdowns. They weren't doing that last season. You got to do that. And you brought up special teams, Brian. You know, I can remember a muffed punt last year that hurt Miami. So these are the things you've got to clean up. And I know it's a different Texas A&M this year because last year they couldn't throw the ball. This year they can. But there's some areas that Miami was not clean in last year's game. They need to clean up this year.
If Miami plays quote unquote error-free football, not giving up a turnover, and they don't just completely wash themselves out, a muff or a block punt, something of that variety, I would be shocked if the game wasn't close going on to the fourth quarter where either ball club could eventually win. Then it comes down to, Tyler making a big play or maybe Parrish breaking a tackle and scoring from 50 yards. You're going to need a big play against them. Again, for those of you who don't know, and I put it in the article, A&M has more 5-stars in their front 7 than probably any team in the country, Georgia or Alabama included. I believe they got 5 D linemen that were 5-stars. I mean, it's insane. You're not going to just beat on them, which will make Mario Cristobal's head explode because that's what he wants to do. It's not going to happen in this game. I don't care how many good linemen you have up front. You got to be able to throw the ball and be balanced. So they've got to run the ball, even if it's ugly in some ways, 3.5 yards a carry for most of the game. And they need a big run so Tyler can hit a play action. They got to hit that play. That's the question. Again, 1 or 2 plays, man. That's the difference between winning and losing in close ball games.
We saw Hurricanes freshman running back Mark Fletcher have awesome debut against Miami, Ohio. You've watched him play high school football more than most have, Brian. We know he's got the big body. He's very intelligent. How much do you think they can trust him in pass protection? Because when it comes to being on the field a lot this week, that's obviously going to be something that Cristobal, Shannon Dawson, Tim Harris have to think about is, can he be trusted to pick up blitzes and protect Van Dyke?
I'm not worried about the physical. That is a strong young man. His technique's probably not where it needs to be. No freshman running back it is. But Mark's a big kid. He's 220-ish.
Yeah.
He's winged out. He looks phenomenal. I was standing about 10 feet from him I was like, holy crap. Mark looks phenomenal.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it's not the physical. It's what front FSU and LSU last night showed this. You're going to see this from A&M. Moving fronts, changing from play to play against a real quality team. You don't see that against garbage teams. Come out and run base defense, and that's what A&M did last week.
Yeah.
You're going to see 3-man front. You're going to see 50. You're going to see, is he going to be mentally ready for that? They got to ask themselves that because they got the D lineman to run some 50 fronts and stuff. They got some massive guys. It makes me very nervous. I think they'll still use him, obviously, but he'll either get the ball or run a route, or they'll move the pocket. If they trust him, more power to him. But I mean, you don't want your quarterback getting smacked, and B,
right.
That's the difference. If he fumbles on one play, that can be a difference in the game. Run the football, catch the football. Let's keep it simple. That's what I would do.
Based on what we saw against Miami, Ohio from Tyler Van Dyke and Miami's passing game, again, they only took 2 shots down the field where the ball was in the air for 20 or more yards. And, the interception was not a pretty throw by Tyler Van Dyke. I do think he has an issue with his throwing hand. Hopefully that's completely healed by this Saturday. But how much do you worry about that, Brian, about the vertical passing game?
I think there's reason to have some doubt. But at the same time, Miami of Ohio, when I was watching them, I mean, it was field level. It's not perfect, but they were trying to keep things in front of them.
Agreed.
I mean, Colby's touchdown, for instance, they were just playing off. So they just kept throwing short and short and short and short. I know fans hate it, but those were the right play calls, and those were the right decisions. If it's cover 2, cover 3, or they're playing soft, you got to get the ball to your guy and allow him to make plays. And that touchdown, by the way, was blocked very well. There's more cohesiveness. That was a good sign. But at the same time, against this squad, you're going to have to throw it up a few times where my guy beats your guy. Colby's 215. There's going to be A&M's got some big DBs, but they don't have no 6'4" guys like Colby Young. I mean, that's, receivers hold the edge there. We're going to find out if, especially in the red zone, Skinner, I think he's another guy. They got to find a way to get him on the field and do something. They've got to get the ball in the corner of the end zone and stuff. Inside the 5, I hope I'm wrong. It's going to be pretty hard to hammer. Again, their D-line is ridiculous. And they've got linebackers that are good players too. You're not going to just line them up and knock them down play after play. You're not. RPO, fades, slants. They're going to have to force some difficult passes in those situations, which would behoove Miami to also, from outside the 10, to take shots. Inside the 10, it's A&M's advantage. As goofy as that sounds, because there's not as much space to throw for Van Dyke. I would try to throw it in from the 10, 15-yard line. Give yourself more area. It could be Ray Joseph on a slip screen. It could be all kinds of things, but they got to use their passing game to their advantage in the red zone.
Got more questions from you guys that we're going to answer on the other side. And by the way, to get your questions in, to get one-on-ones with me, to get text messages directly from my phone to yours with breaking news, recruiting scoops, all sorts of insights, you can join our exclusive SMS texting community through Subtext. I include a link in the show description below if you want to sign up. Try it completely free for 14 days. And then if you like it, you can opt in after 2 weeks, $4.99 a month. We give you a lot of extra added value on there. Got plenty of questions about the quarterback situation, present and future. People want to know why Jakari Brown didn't get into the game. People also want to know, how's Judd Anderson doing? Which is a great question because he's at a new high school and he just had a great game this past Friday. So we'll talk about that and more when we come back. We're only getting started here. You want to keep it locked to Locked On Canes. Folks, the NFL is back this week. College football, is already back. You can get ready for NFL season with incredible offers from FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. Plus, all customers who bet $5 will get $100 off NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Now is the best time to join FanDuel. The app is easy to use, and you can bet on everything from spreads to player props and more. I was telling you guys the Miami Hurricanes are now 3.5-point underdogs, a couple days after being 7.5-point dogs. So the best time to bet on Miami was a couple days ago. The second best time to bet on Miami is right now. So visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and kick off the NFL season with an offer you won't want to miss. FanDuel, official partner of the NFL. Thank you so much for making Locked On Canes your first listen today. Alex Donno alongside our recruiting overlord. He doesn't mind being called that. Brian Smith is with us. So, Brian, we got so many different questions about Jakari Brown. Salty Warrior asked one of those. Andy asked one of those, a few others. So I'm not going to read them all individually, but the fact that even though I was watching in warmups and he was lined up as the number 2 quarterback, but then in the game itself, he was not the second quarterback in. Emory Williams was. And as we talked about, he performed really well. And so, Brian, do you think at points during the season, they're going to find a way to get Jakari on the field in certain packages or situations because he's one of the best athletes on the team, period?
It's an interesting question. And the only thing that I've ever spoken to any coach about that gives me pause on whether they will actually do it, he's still learning the quarterback position, progressions, all that, and it's not friendly. It's a long, long process. If you work on him playing receiver or just a running package or whatever, that takes time away from his number one goal. Every coach has a different opinion on how to do that. I have no idea what Shannon Dawson's is, nor do I know what Mario wants. Maybe he just wants to be a part of the team and he doesn't care and he'll be the quarterback run guy. They could, if they're going to use him, the A&M game would actually be an interesting one. I was just mentioning a minute ago, inside the 5 is not friendly against A&M because they're just raw talent and size at D-line. But if you give yourself an extra blocker by doing quarterback run plays, you could put Tyler in the game with him. Tyler goes out to receiver. They have to cover him because even, a quarterback, if you don't put somebody, I think throw it to him for a touchdown, you gain an extra guy. And he's, for anybody that stood next to Brown, he is absolutely yoked. That is not a man that I would want to stand in front of when he's running the football. No. He's a big dude, man. His arms are like my legs. So they might be able to do that. But the thing that I took away from this, hey, it's who came in the game first, Van Dyke. 2, who came in next? That's Emory Williams. He's the number 2 quarterback. They can spin it any way they want. He's the number 2 quarterback because he came in the game second. So right now he's got to find a way to get on the field or he's got to beat out Emory. And how do they do that? I don't know. It's a tough situation.
So a question about the quarterbacking of the future. Derek in Nashville wants to know, how is Judd Anderson doing in his senior high school season? He also asked if we're trying to get another quarterback for 2024. I think for the second part, Brian, it seems like no. I mean, Miami's already got a good one in 2025, a really good one in Luke Nickel. I think Judd is the guy in 2024. And he recently transferred in season. He went from Jones County High School to a mega program at Warner Robins. And Judd led a comeback on Friday. So he seems to have hit the ground running and had his best game of the season at his new high school.
Yeah, I was messaging with him a little bit, and I'm excited for him. Warner Robins, for people that don't know, that is a power. They won back-to-back state titles a couple years ago. They're a team that, if you're playing them, you better bring your hard hat. Very physical, and they always have Power 5 kids. He's got a receiver that's going to Georgia Tech, who I think is a national recruit. I wouldn't be surprised if Miami started recruiting him. They've got players, but it's hard to just switch over like that. I thought, man, I don't know how this is going to work. New signals and all that. That's pretty impressive. I did not anticipate that. I was surprised that he even played that much, but good for him. And, learning a new offense takes forever. I'm sure he knows a lot of those kids because he lives like 15, 20 minutes outside of that town, but that's impressive. I think that it's a good sign that he's playing that well with really good players too. He's not afraid of the moment. So Judd's, this is only second year starting too.
Yeah.
I think he's still progressing as a quarterback overall, but now he's on a big stage. Ask me in a few weeks where he's at, because everybody takes the sledgehammer towards Warner Robins. They circle him because that's just the team in Central Georgia. No question. They're one of the best. Good for him though. He started off really well.
In other recruiting news, the Miami Hurricanes made the finalist list, the top 5 for 4-star interior offensive lineman Eddy Pierre Louis. He's out of Tampa, Florida at Catholic High School. Hurricanes are in that top 5 along with the Oklahoma Sooners, who's been kind of a nightmare for the Hurricanes this cycle. Oklahoma's been landing a lot of guys Miami wants. UCF is in there. The Oregon Ducks are in there. Texas A&M is in his finalist list, along with Miami. So, I mean, fair to say, Brian, with Eddy Pierre Louis, whatever happens on the field this weekend could have an impact for this young man.
I think that he's he's a kid that is just all over. I know Eddy very, very well. I've known him about 3 years. He's all over the map, and he can go any school. I know for a while, Oregon was a team. Then it was UCF. Tennessee was talked about. Now they're not in his top 5. He told me recently that he was going to try to get to Miami for a game this year. That'll be the key. Whatever school or schools come down to his final 2 or 3, it'll probably be ones that had him on campus during the fall. I don't know if there's really a quote unquote leader because his list has changed so much. But let me be clear: as an interior defensive lineman or interior offense, he can play either. He's a dude. He's 318, 320 pounds, and he can freaking move. That's a guy that can play early at about any place in the country. Great guy too. He's a lot of fun to be around. Eddy's fun.
I love it. Brian Smith, excellent job as always. Follow him on X at FBScout_Florida. Check out his work at allhurricanes.com. He is my colleague there, and he does an excellent job. And check him out all over the Locked On College Network. Brian, thank you so much for the time. And I think we're going to chat again later this week. So this is not the only time you guys will see Brian on the show.
Everybody have a great day. Thank you much.
I love it. We'll talk to everyone next time on another episode of Locked On Canes. Make sure to hit that like button if you're watching on YouTube. Make sure to subscribe if you're listening to the audio version. We'll talk to you next time. Locked On Canes, part of the awesome Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.